Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Climate and Cuisine podcast. My name is Jane DeMarines, and I'm the Executive Director of Climate Diet, and we are the sponsor of Climate and Cuisine. Our guest today is animal rights activist Max Broad. Max is Executive Director of DC Voters for Animals, but he also is manager of the DC Veg Week, so an important ally and a friend. We've walked a few parades together promoting our cause, right, Max?
That's right.
Well, so let's dig right in. Max, do you want to talk a minute about how you got your start in animal rights? What is your origin story?
Yeah, absolutely, Jane. And first off, let me just say how glad I am to be here because there's no other organization. I mean, just like as somebody who comes from the climate movement, the environmental movement, I am so grateful for sustainable earth eating to be just a leading voice on climate and food systems. Like our environmental movement is really lacking in having these conversations. And I tell people who are outside the environmental movement who are wondering what's going on, like it makes sense. The fossil fuels are first and foremost, and they are the biggest contributor to climate change. I get it. I get why it's such a big focus. But the environmental movement also has to focus on food systems. And the fact of the matter is that animal agriculture is just such a devastating contributor to climate change, to water pollution, to land conservation, to biodiversity loss, that we can't ignore it. We can't keep ignoring it. And so I'm just really grateful for sustainable earth eating. And of course, climate and cuisine is something I'm always happy to talk about.
Well, thanks so much for your kind words. It's a big job, and so it's great to have the work of your two organizations, Max. So I know you're from the West Coast, and I know you came to Washington, D.C. I think there actually was a tour or maybe a U-turn at Boston. So do you want to describe that a little bit and how you came here and how you ended up as the founder of DCFA?
Yeah, thank you. So it's one of those funny stories where like I was in grad school in California and I had an internship in Boston lined up that fell through last minute. It was horrible. It was like one of those head spinning moments where I was essentially fired before I even started. It was so like crazy. But of course, I love that. I love that saying, never doubt that not getting what you, or no, remember that not getting what you want can be a beautiful stroke of luck. And so instead, I scrambled to find another internship. I found an internship at the World Resources Institute. So I was like, all right, I'll come out to DC. It was a last minute thing. And I spent the summer in DC in 2011. And I was expecting to hate DC. I was expecting to be just chewed up and spit out by all the political types in DC. And sure enough, it made me a convert. And what I learned about DC is that so many people move here to make an impact on the world, to make the world a better place. So many people like yourself, Jane, who are out here spending not just our free time, but really our emotional energy to contribute to kindness, to happiness, to compassion, and on a systemic level. And I knew that I was a better person when I'm around that. I knew that I'm more motivated when I'm around people like you. And so that's why I came to DC and landed here. I've been here pretty much ever since, and working mostly in the environmental movement. I was working as a government contractor in the Department of Energy. And then I spent some time at the National Wildlife Federation, working on forestry, energy, and conservation issues. And that was cool because I got to work on policy at the local, national, and international level with the UNFCCC, which was really exciting. And then in 2019, I started DC Voters for Animals to look at political advocacy for animals. So, that's really, lifting up the policies and politicians doing the most for animals and our community in DC. And
so,
then,
Max, let me just jump in here. I just want to say what a fantastic background for the work that we're doing. Energy and forestry, all of that, of course, is so connected to food systems animal agriculture and fossil fuels. So what a tremendous background. I didn't realize actually all of that. So yeah, no wonder you're so good at your job. So let's dig
Oh, thank you.
let's dig into the policy
Yeah.
part of it. And I know that has been your focus, and I think I mentioned to you recently that I'm trying to work a little bit more on that myself. I've tried to do as much as I can through outreach to media and getting environmental reporters to recognize animal agriculture, and there's a job there, and trying to reach out to consumers through Veg Fest and other things, as you know, because you've been a participant in those as well. So there's many different ways to go, but I think the advocacy has the prospect of maybe a more immediate and far-reaching impact and a broader impact. If you can change some laws, if you can get more funding for some of the programs that teach students about diet and the impact of livestock and what they eat on animals. So do you want to take a minute and just talk about your policy role, and also, what you've been doing, and also what you plan for the future?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. And I couldn't agree more. I'm a big fan of all prongs approach, right? We need every approach to and wherever people's strengths are, I'm a big fan of people finding a way to plug in a way that's meaningful. That being said, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't examine our tactics with scrutiny and optimizing for impact, because we want to obviously, stop the impacts of climate change from animal agriculture as quickly as possible. So, in my organization, DC Voters for Animals, we do political advocacy. So that's, like things like endorsing candidates, educating them on issues, meeting with politicians, and then of course working on policies. So right now we have a bill in DC that we're working to pass that would prohibit the sale of fur being not only just this incredibly inhumane industry. And like, I was looking at fur products the other day and saw that there's like some animals' fur was made into sandals, and just like what a horrendous, use of life that they were, killed to be made into some sandals. But also it's the fashion material with the biggest carbon footprint. So, I think we have a real opportunity to just use policy to shift industries like these as we as a society evolve to have more thoughtful approaches to consumption and animals.
And I'd just like to compliment you and your organization for the fashion show, where you did highlight that there's so many clothes to wear that are not made from animals and are sustainable and are beautiful at the same time.
Wasn't that so fun?
That was absolutely great. That was absolutely.
I'm so glad you came, Jane.
I was disappointed I didn't volunteer to be in it.
Next time.
So the next one you do, you have to put, we have to have some sustainable clothes for maybe the more mature woman.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
that was something I really wanted to do. It was, you notice we did have a diversity of models, not just in age and generation, but also race and ability status and body type. And so it was really cool to have all these different models showing off just amazing clothing and really, showing how much fun we could have with vegan fashion that doesn't include animals.
Yeah, no, it was really a wonderful event, and I look forward to the next one if you repeat that. So you've definitely had some innovative things. And when I talked about the march, I'm trying to think, because it was probably a year or two ago that we protested, and we started in a park, and you had some elected officials from DC as well as a starting point, who made remarks, and then we marched around the city a little bit after that. And I think we did, I think there was TV coverage of it, or I definitely saw reporters around. Well, is that something you plan to do again? And any comments on how effective that was?
Yeah, so it would have been a couple years ago because it didn't happen last year. It's happening again this year.
Oh.
So save the date. It's going to be October 26th. So, you know, that's just, so that was something that we had a lot of conversation around during the beginning of the Trump election, is how effective are marches? Do they lead to anything? And I think marches have two impacts. One, they build community, right? When you and I were out there marching together, we got to know each other better and stand in solidarity together, which was great. And secondly, they build visibility, right? They show people that, hey, there is popular support for this issue. And that's where I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And then they get, multiple and exponential impact from any media that report on it, or just the people walking around that then know about your organization and know about people care about animals, and what is it they're talking about. It could be their first exposure.
Yeah.
And tourists also who happen to be in our city that are learning about some of the things that we're trying to do here.
Right. Jane,
so go ahead.
Can we pivot actually for a second here? Because I think that animal advocates are deeply discounting how important this election is. And I think, everybody understands that it's a high stakes election. But one thing I'm seeing is that the way the president shapes out has not only an impact on our democracy, but also will have a huge impact on how animals are treated in this country and abroad. And is this something that you've given much thought to?
No, I think it's an important comment, and important for so many reasons. My party is definitely on the right track on this, and my congressman in particular, since we're just talking beyond the election, we're also electing a new Congress. My congressman, Jamie Raskin, is not exactly a vegan, but he's definitely close to being a vegan, and has done things at the federal level. For example, federal cafeterias now are required to have a vegetarian option for all those people in the country that didn't have that chance and worked for the government. It's a huge number of people. So he joined with 30 colleagues, and they passed a requirement that federal cafeterias or any federal place selling food has to offer a vegetarian option. So he is an effective advocate of knowing how to, further a beneficial cause for our country and the cause that we care so much about. And I think I mentioned to you, I'm hoping, I've been talking to people on his staff, and I'm hoping to get some new advocacy working with Congressman Raskin as well, but I don't have those details firmed up yet.
Yeah, well, I love Representative Jamie Raskin, and I'm really excited. That's exactly the type of systemic change we need. We're not going to change the system entirely overnight, but making those incremental steps, making plant-based food more accessible, making it more increasing exposure and familiarity is really great. That's the type of stuff that I'm working to do on the local level, but we really need to be doing it all throughout the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And the school lunch program, that's federally funded. Some states have already been passing legislation in that way, but I'm not sure if there's a federal solution to it. I've made written comment letters to Department of Agriculture, asking for changes on how they measure greenhouse gas emissions from animal agriculture. And I don't know the impact of that. It was within the last 6 months, so probably they got thousands of letters, and they're maybe still sifting through those. But we just have to keep working every way we can. But
Absolutely.
Jamie Raskin has shown himself as an advocate and has been at some of the veg fests that have been organized that you and I have both been a part of and a sponsor. And so he's certainly a good place to start. I know Cory Booker has done some things too. Do you want to mention? I think you know more about that than I do.
Yeah. He's done a couple really exciting bills. Now, these are called marker bills, right? So that means that they're bills that are not going to pass in any near future, but they do a good job of indicating where they're shifting the Overton window, right? Shifting the spectrum on which we're thinking about things. And so one bill that's really cool is called the Farm Systems Reform Act. And that one is to essentially get rid of big factory farms and switch to small farming and have more support for small farmers and just take on these mega farms that are not only promoting antitrust activity, but also are just wreaking havoc on the environment and the animals and the workers in those supply chains.
That sounds like an important piece of legislation. There are a lot of people that are injured in that industry, both on the farming side and in slaughterhouses in particular. Often the employees that take those jobs because they're dangerous and hard are immigrants, and they're often people that may not have a firm status in our country, and so they won't report these injuries, but people are being injured, and it's dangerous, and it's very sad to think children being employed in these ages of 14 in some of these slaughterhouses to do the cleaning, also with dangerous chemicals, as you can imagine, to clean up after animals are slaughtered. So there's a lot of reform, I think, needed in that part of this industry as well. So I'm glad to hear that Senator Cory Booker is moving a bill forward or starting that.
Yeah,
that gets at least some of this regulation of.
Yeah, he introduced a bill, and I think actually when she was in the Senate, Vice President Kamala Harris was a co-introducer of that bill. So
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that was exciting. And then, yeah, Jane, as you bring up, these meat processing abattoirs, as they some call them, are really horrendous for the workers. And the other bill that Cory Booker introduced is to reduce line speeds. Are you familiar with line speeds?
Yeah, it's horrible. I've watched videos on this, and that's where a lot of the industry, some of the workers are working 10 hours. They don't give them very many breaks. And this speed that the meat goes by, and their part of it is to cut off, a leg or some aspect of it with, sharp knives. I wrote an op-ed related to Labor Day last year and put it out saying, eating meat may be costing an arm and a leg. And
I love that.
It wasn't to be funny, but it did get published in the some New York newspapers. So the data is very bad, and the data in terms of injuries is totally understated. But Penn State actually did their own research on this and I went to Penn State, so proud of. They did their own research, and Pennsylvania's big ag state.
Mm-hmm.
They went to emergency rooms across the country and got their own data on how many injuries there were from farming and from slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
And it was astronomically bigger than what had been reported, frankly.
Which absolutely makes sense, because as you point out, a lot of these laborers are undocumented, they're migrants, and they don't necessarily feel safe either reporting workplace violations or seeking correction for labor abuses. So they're being just rampantly abused, mistreated. For people who have read The Jungle, it really feels like a lot of that still happens to this day. from Upton Sinclair's book about the slaughterhouse world in Chicago. The thing that's changed is who are the people in the slaughterhouses.
Max, this has been such a great opportunity to talk to you and hear more about your work, and also share those issues which we do share, and to have you as a friend and colleague in this important endeavor. And I love to see your zeal and your so many creative ideas. So thank you so much. Do you have any last words you would like to add?
Well, just reiterate, Jane, yeah, I really appreciate everything you're doing to make a systemic change, and people aren't going to be ready to just stop eating meat and stop employing big agriculture overnight. But the more we can do to reduce the demand for animal agriculture, the more we can have a positive impact on this planet, the animals, and the environment. So I'm just really grateful for you.
Thank you so much, Max, for sharing this time with me and for sharing your thoughts. And thank you for being with us. This has been another episode of Climate and Cuisine podcast.